Okay, let's talk about collaboration. For so many nurse practitioners, that's kind of a four-letter word, but the reality is it is still required in so many states. So we need to have collaborating physicians. Sometimes they're very difficult to find. And today there are many companies that are offering that service to find you a collaborating physician. But as you know, and I know, not all companies are created equally. Well, today I'm talking with the co-founder of one of those companies who has a different idea, a little bit of an insight, if you will, on what it's like for nurse practitioners, and thus in creating a solution to the problem that she was having, it created this company. So let's take a listen and find out why this company just might be a little bit different than some of the others that are out there. Hello and welcome to the NP Business Matters podcast. I'm your host, Barbara C. Phillips, and I am looking forward to talking about this particular episode. This is episode number 93. Now, I'm talking with Dr. Rafid Fadul, who is the co-founder of Zivan Health. And as you listen to this, you will find out how it even came to be, and where the inspiration came from, which was a partner who was a nurse practitioner. I think you'll also find how this company is a bit different. And so I look forward to hearing your feedback of this particular episode. And since you are listening to this episode over here on YouTube, you can leave your comments, your thoughts, etc. below the video here. I would encourage you and would love to hear from you about your challenges with collaboration, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, and any thoughts that you may have, keeping in mind that while we may not all agree with collaboration, it is here for the time being until such that all 50 states are FPA. And of course, in YouTube fashion, if you have found value in this episode, please like it, subscribe to the channel, share it with your colleagues, and that sort of thing. But let's not delay anymore. Let's just get right into the podcast. So, Rafid, I am so glad that you are here with me today. And for everybody listening, Rafid is the co-founder and CEO of Zivan Healthcare, which can help nurse practitioners find collaborating physicians. So how can you tell me a little bit about how Zivan got started, and what was the idea behind this?
Yeah, it was really kind of a few different things that all kind of came together in the genesis of why we started Zivan. I'm a physician by training, and when I left my fellowship, I started a health services company that contracted back into health systems. And we learned firsthand just how hard it was to kind of navigate all the things that are necessary for providers to not just have these jobs, but thrive in those roles. And then when eventually we sold that company to a larger practice, and I was working at a digital health services company. Again, and we were kind of a B2B model, so we would support other healthcare entities. And I saw the same problem again, but there's this huge emphasis towards shifting patient-facing work towards nurse practitioners, and rightfully so. But what was lacking is the infrastructure to support them with respect to compliance, with respect to continuing education, et cetera. So it dawned on me that there's this big gap in the marketplace. And last and not, but certainly not least, my better half is a nurse practitioner, and I saw some of the struggles that she had firsthand. And so as a result of that, I took some time off after COVID. I'm a pulmonary critical care doctor, so I kind of cooled my heels for a little bit once the pandemic was climbing down, and then when I went back into the startup world, this was the problem I really wanted to solve, because when you think about the trends of workforce, right? Physicians, we are dwindling in number over time, and much more so in certain specialties. Meanwhile, you have nurse practitioners who are growing at anywhere from 8 to 9% year over year. So there's going to be time, not too distant future where there's going to be more nurse practitioners than there are physicians. And
Right.
so the fact that we didn't have robust infrastructure to support this workforce struck me as a huge deficit. So I got with a good friend of mine, Jesse Korn. He's a product guy and much smarter than me. And then we said, "Hey, this is like here's this problem. I think we should solve." And I suckered him into it, and then we started Zivian.
Well, great. I mean, that's the best way to start any kind of a company is solving a problem.
Yeah,
And, for nurse practitioners who still require some form of collaboration, supervision, whatever term you want to use, I prefer to just keep it as collaboration. Um, it's a headache.
yeah,
It's a headache. I can't
totally.
tell you how many people are either looking for collaborating physicians. Well, you probably know this, but early on for me with NPBO, I ran into a nurse practitioner who I'd been working with, and all of a sudden, her collaborator in the middle of the morning had called her and said he was no longer going to be her collaborator. She had patients in the room, she had people waiting in the waiting room, and she was dead in the water.
Yeah,
She could not continue to see patients, and she could not find another one. It was a very, not a very positive state that she was working in. And so she ended up having to close the practice, which was unfortunate because it's the patients that end up suffering
exactly.
in the long run. And years ago, I also thought, why doesn't somebody start something like this? I
Yeah.
would go to these conferences and it's like, why doesn't somebody start one of these companies? And now we are seeing them. So with you guys have it set up the way that I understand it is that you're supporting the nurse practitioners in how they need to make sure that they are staying in compliance along with the physicians. So what does that look like for a nurse practitioner?
Yeah, so the average nurse practitioner who comes to us from an independent channel, not associated with a larger enterprise, oftentimes they're coming to us for one of two things. They need a collaborating physician, and so we have a marketplace where that kind of matches them with physicians, and we manage the whole transaction. So when you think about it, like think about your friend, you know, when she was finding this collaborator, she had to kind of like ask local people, maybe you know
Mhm.
someone. If that doesn't work, you post an ad on Indeed, but you don't really know the doctor you're getting. You don't have an NPDB report about this person. You don't know their history, and you don't know that they're actually going to really, in earnest, fulfill their obligations for chart reviews and supervision and oversight, all those things. And the spirit of a collaborative relationship is one where we are colleagues and thought
Exactly.
partners, right? And so you don't want a doctor who's looking at this as so-called mailbox money, right? Like they're just like absentee physicians. And so we built this marketplace with that in mind, trying to block against all those things. So
Mhm.
we move a lot of those hurdles, and all this experience lives on our platform. So let's just say you and I are collaborators here. All the transactions are all there. We can have chart reviews there. We have, HIPAA compliant chat functionality, so we can discuss cases together if we like. And it all creates an audit trail so that if a board of nursing or a board of medicine or whomever comes knocking and says, "Hey, can you just show us that you're compliant with our state rules?" Which, as you know, are widely different on a state by state basis.
Totally.
Even within a state, I'm not going to name names, but there is a state where the state legislature conflicts directly with the board of medicine, the board of nursing on the exact same issue. So,
Mhm.
as a layperson, like, how do you know which one to follow? Do I follow the state legislature or the board of medicine? Like, it's challenging is an understatement, right?
It
So
is. Yeah.
because I mean, we were never trained on this. We were trained on how to take care of people. We weren't trained on how to
Exactly.
navigate the labyrinth of state regs. So anyway, all that relationship lives in the platform, right? So you can find a physician there who's vetted, who's gone through our own credentialing committee. Everyone goes through primary source verification through a third party, which is something you don't see so often these days, unfortunately. Like there's this, so there are other marketplaces out there that just kind of want to put a warm body out, and and everyone's got a different approach, but ours is very heavily focused on compliance and making sure we're doing it right, and
Mhm.
we're honoring the spirit of what collaboration is meant to be. It's not meant to be tick a box, right? It's meant to be something
Right.
truly like thought partnership. So, and then the secret sauce, of course, is on the back end. We have what we call our proprietary rules engine. Essentially, it's constantly scraping boards of nursing, boards of medicine, boards of pharmacy, and state legislature websites, looking for proposed rule changes that would impact the way we practice. And then we take those rule changes, we validate them with outside legal counsel. If they're valid, we impute them back into the platform so that, again, let's use the use case of you and I, and let's just say California, hey, there's this new rule change, bravo, Rafid, this is going to happen in 60 days. Here are the tools that you'll need to maintain compliance with these new regulations. And then here's the audit trail documenting that you did it. So at no time are we out of compliance. And then
Wow.
so that's really kind of the special sauce. That's a nice differentiator for us. And then of course we have all the wraparound services as well that you need to just kind of run your practice, whether it's licensing, whether credentialing. We have relationships with adjacent vendors like medical malpractice and EMRs. All the things
Mhm.
that the average nurse practitioner, when he or she wants to go hang their shingle, they would need all these adjacencies. So like our goal was like, how can we remove all the friction so we can just allow people to do what we train
Mhm.
for, which is just
Right.
take care of folks, right? So we
Right.
try to be the easy button on how to be compliant and maintain quality and launch a good practice.
And that is really important, especially with so many people practicing in multiple states now, particularly with the telehealth and thing. And I found it really interesting that you had mentioned mailbox money because, oh, probably 10 years ago or so, there was an article on Medscape about how physicians could make more money, other than their jobs, additional streams of income. And one of the things that was mentioned was our company, and that a lot of nurse practitioners are looking. And so I would have all these physicians contact us,
Mm.
wanting to have a nurse practitioner as a to collaborate with. So that, and how'd you find us? Medscape, and it was pretty interesting. It's also a little infuriating.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
There's an interesting spectrum of physician attitudes towards nurse practitioners, and
yeah,
and I didn't know this until a few years ago because professionally I grew up in hospitals that we were shoulder to shoulder with NPs, PAs, RTs, and I'm pretty sure there's a few, RTs and NPs and PAs that have kept me out of jail for like almost murdering someone when I was an intern. They probably saved my butt. So I never knew there was this, tension that existed. And I find it interesting. And by the way, there's a lot of physicians that look at me quite negatively because as you can imagine, because they're like, you shouldn't be supporting nurse practitioners. And agree to disagree. I think that's actually a really short-sighted, kind of silly view of things because 78% of this country is a healthcare desert, right? So
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
in good conscience say I would rather not let this person see care or get good care, or they have to wait 6 months to see an MD or a DO. I I can't justify that. And this idea that we are, that there's it's not good care that the NPs are giving just by virtue of the fact that the training is significantly shorter. Yeah, I get the training is shorter. Look, I went to my residency and fellowship for another 6 years on top of med school of 4 years. So like I got a decade into just training, right? Like I get it. And that's not the same as 2, 3 years, but I would argue that's exactly the reason why we have collaborative relationships is so that we can actually work together and solve a common problem, which is that patient's needs, right? So I I, I don't really buy into that argument so much as a reason to not allow nurse practitioners to see patients. I think it's kind of silly. But again, there's I'm sure you can find like death threats on me online, so from some of my colleagues.
I haven't heard anything about death threats,
Okay,
but
good.
but there are a lot of overtly negative people out there when it comes to nurse practitioners, despite the fact, as you mentioned, all of these people needing care and not being able to access care. So
Right.
it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Um, so can you talk a little bit more about the platform in terms of, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about the audit trails and the collaboration. I'm just waving at the little
Yeah.
puppy going behind you.
Like that quickly that
Um,
remind me.
and the chart reviews. So, I mean, one of the things that I was trying to wrap my head around was that if I'm using XYZ EMR, just any EMR, and you need to review a chart of mine, how does that happen if that's supposed to happen on your platform?
There's a few different ways. So it's a great question. So we are now expanding integrations with certain EMRs, and it's going to expand further. But more commonly is one of two ways currently. The first way is either we upload the charts onto the platform, which again is HIPAA compliant, high trust certified. And the other way, more commonly, is that we have a lot of partners who have proprietary EMRs. And for
Mhm.
them, maybe they don't want to integrate, or it's not as easy to do so. So what we do in those situations is oftentimes those partners will grant EMR access to the physicians so they can do the chart reviews. They have access to the
Mhm.
actual PHI on that EMR, and then they'll document the
Okay.
encounter, document all of the quality oversight and overviews within the platform.
Okay. So, because a lot of people right now are going ahead and, um, they just go into the EMR. They have access to the EMR and will do it there. But so
Right.
in this case, for your platform, it would just be they're going to go in and say, yes, I did this, basically.
Yeah, and there's so the experience, what it looks like for the collaborative partners is there's a series of questions. Some of them
Mhm.
relate to state regulations, right? So documenting compliance with those, the percent of chart reviews, the attendance of meetings, et cetera. And then the balance of the questions, which can actually be modified by our partners, is related to um, just watching her slide out the back door there. The balance of those questions are related to quality, right? So we'd look at all the things you would imagine are relevant, like is documentation appropriate? Did they identify emergent issues? Was there a med rec on? Things like that. And these can also be tailored by a lot of the enterprises that we support. So as an example, we support a women's health practice that's in multi-states, and they focus on menopause. And so one of their main therapeutics is hormone replacement therapy.
Right.
And so, as you know, like HRT comes with concern for malignancy in particular patients, and so they over index towards that just to make sure that everyone is double and triple checking, certain risk factors, et cetera, and then engaging in these shared decision making processes. So they've tailored their questions and their monthly reviews to reflect more of the experience that they want to have.
Good, good. When are you in all states? Do you have collaborators in all states and nurse practitioners pretty much?
Yes. Yeah. So
Well, I
we,
should
we
say all states that require collaboration.
actually even other states. So to answer the first half of that question, we're in all 50 states plus TC, and actually the U.S. territories as well. We have
Right.
physician collaborators on the U.S. territories, and we manage over 7,000 physician licenses today. With all that being said, we of course we're in every state that's it's a requirement to have a collaborator. But even in the states that we don't, which I honestly I take as a strong validation of what we're offering, and these, the commitment of these physicians. So there are many states where they're independent practice, where we have nurse practitioners saying, hey, in California is a good example because there's an hour requirement. We have some NPs that said, well, I know I've met my independence, but I'd like to maintain this relationship because they
Mhm.
found it fruitful, right? That's the goal of it. It's supposed to be collaborative, and it's supposed to truly be like a thought
Mhm.
partnership. And so they've continued even in states despite having independent or full practice authority. And then there's other states, as you know, that they're the state is a full practice authority state, but
Mhm.
the insurance companies would still require, yeah, which is its own kind of bucket. But yeah,
Yeah.
they still require collaborative
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few states that do that, that are not the states, the payers that do that. That
Right.
is, yeah. It's just, what I tell a lot of NPs when you are trying to open up your own practice, it is definitely going to be um, a lot of hoops. It's
Yeah.
just a lot of hoops. And I mean, we've been doing this for a number of years, and we've worked with NPs in all states and in some of the territories, not all of the
Mm.
territories, but in some of them, in order to get practices going. And, practices, it's not for everybody, but it's certainly, for those that are willing to do it. Yeah, let's just make sure you can jump through the hoops and that you can jump through high enough until we can get all of that changed. One of the things that I understand is with this, you're also looking at the future services for those that are independent, because eventually we will have full practice in all states. And I think that goes beyond what even the insurance companies eventually will come to terms with. And, somebody with an independent license has an independent license, or I
Right.
should say an autonomous license. Because, like you keep saying, the spirit of collaboration, I don't believe in independence per se, but I believe that we should work within the full scope of what we know, what we have learned, our education, our experience. Because I worked for many, many, many years in Washington State, full practice authority.
Yep.
I always had collaborators. I'm not a cardiologist.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick up the phone and talk with the cardiologist or the neurologist, all of these people that I needed to bounce things off of. Do you need to see this person? What do you think? This kind of
As
thing.
does every physician, right? Or they should at least, right? Like I'm a
Right.
clinical care. I rely on my colleagues just like you would, right? So
Right.
to me it's quite similar.
Yeah. And so to me, that's collaboration. But I know as you guys grow, what are you looking at for future for independent, if you will,
Yeah,
autonomous practitioners?
yeah, it's a great question, and so we are diving deeper into building out all of these kind of as a broad bucket provider enablement tools, right?
Hmm.
So I want you to think about all the pain points that you've had at various stages, whether it was like getting a DEA, managing the licensure, doing payer enrollments, like all these
Hmm.
things, like patient acquisition. How do you market? Again, something that we are never taught at any point during our medical training,
Right.
right? Like all those things, and then having a place to track all of your stuff, whether it's like your procedure logs, right, or whether it's your CMEs, and or if you want continuing education just to be, like learn a new skill set, right? So, there's a new intervention that's out there. How do I, be at the top of my game so I'm providing the best care for my patients, all right? And so, we're thinking about all the things that would make life better for the invisible stakeholder, which is that patient who's now going to get access to care, right? So if I want to make if that's my North Star is like I want to do right by this person, then I'm going to number one enable access for the nurse practitioner, right? So like we talked about that with the marketplace, manage the compliance, manage the quality, help them have extra training, create community so they can have other colleagues of not just physicians, but nurse practitioners with whom they can chat and discuss cases and share stories, et cetera. Like all these things in order for you to have a healthy practice and a healthy outcome for this patient are all
Hmm.
necessary. So we're
Yeah.
building out a suite of tools and services that are meant purely to enable optimal care, right? And whether you're an NP or you're a physician, you can all benefit from it, right? Any other license holder, there's upside for all of us to continue learning, right? We call it the practice of medicine because we can never perfect it. We always have to keep working at our craft, right? And so we're building that suite of tools to enable that continued practice.
Excellent, excellent. It sounds good. Make me want to come and practice and do
Yeah.
something with you guys. So, what haven't I asked you that you would like to share with nurse practitioners before we end?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think the couple things I would say is I feel your pain, number one, right? Like I know that how intimidating it can be to start your own thing, right? Or
Mhm.
even whether you're starting or not, when you're working for someone else and you're worried about like these rules and regs, I get it. I'm licensed across the whole country. So I have 50 licenses in
Wow.
DC. Yeah, which is, as you can imagine, like a nightmare to keep up, and it's also like a lot
Right.
to think about. So, um, I just want to say like I feel their pain, right? Like I get it
Mhm.
personally, and again, I mentioned my better half is a nurse practitioner. So like I watched her struggle to find preceptors, and she went to a great institution. I watched her try to navigate, maybe some employers who are better than others, right? And a little
Mhm.
less supportive, shall we say. I'm trying to be very, politically correct here. But not only do you have my empathy towards kind of your journey, but the other thing I would say is, as you're differentiating like the tool sets that you're looking at, you want to look at the things that are like give it a good look, because there's a lot of competitors out there. I'm not going to name names, but there are people who are very money focused.
Right.
Um, and you can tell right away, like they've got these like, sign up fees and this fee and that fee. And like, I get it. Everyone's got to make a business, right? But my advice is the first thing is like it's definitely doable, and you will crush
Mhm.
it and you will be successful. I have full confidence as long as you're committed to what your plan is, like you're going to do great. And the
Mhm.
second piece is look at these different tools out there and look which one matches your needs the best, right? Because by the way, it may not be Zivian, it may be something else, but
Right.
um, look for the tool sets that match you the best, right? And think about the things that matter most: compliance, quality, helping you build a business. Like all these are the things if I'm in your shoes, like that's what I would look at, right? But
Mhm.
um, this is like a kind of like a non-sales thing to say, but
Mhm.
even if it's just a conversation and you ultimately can gain something from it just by just getting on the phone, calling us and saying, "Hey, here's what I'm trying to do. What do you think about this? Like, is there a better way to go about it?" We have a lot of those calls every single day, like people calling us saying, I'm in this state. I'm considering being, owning my own practice, trying to
Mhm.
understand what I would need to do that. And they ultimately, choose not to sometimes. They choose to do it sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
but at least we can impart some of that knowledge and be helpful. So, that I think that's the other piece I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's great. And certainly that's what NPBO is all about, is helping these NPs
Exactly.
getting started in the right way, and trying to have people understand there's a lot of misinformation, and this is what you need to be looking at. So I'm really glad that we've partnered with you guys in order to help NPs that need to have collaboration, and to do it in a way that feels better than some of the choice words I often will hear in trying to create a collaborating relationship with
Yeah.
someone. So that's really great. So, to everyone who's listening, I'll definitely have links below the podcast, below the video, so that you can find information. And of course, we have all of your information on our website already. So, I appreciate you taking the time out today and to talk with us. And, hopefully, we'll have you again sometime.
That'd be great. Barbara, thank you so much for having me. And we're super excited to be partnering with you as well.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us today here on YouTube and giving us your feedback and your thoughts on collaboration in general and this episode as well. As always, I appreciate likes and subscribes and sharing. And I will have all the links both to NPBO as well as to Zivian down below. And again, it will have our referral link, which is gives you 20% off on your first month if you choose to use their services at Zivan. So thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.